Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Yang mulia Dato Speaker, Tuan Arif, Johari Abdul, tetamu-tetamu kehormat, tuan-tuan yang terutama yang hadir begitu ramai, di mana Speaker dan rakan-rakan yang dimuliakan. Saya ucap tahniah kepada Datuk Johari dan Datuk Speaker sedikit siang dan Kaukus yang telah mengendali simposium ini yang saya kira sangat bermakna. Kita dengar pandangan dari ICU, kemudian Bank Negara, kemudian yang agak kejutan sedikit daripada Profesor Terence Gomez, dan ini menggambarkan suatu suasana yang sangat positif dalam negara kita. Sudah bayangkan kita undang pelbagai pandangan kerana apa yang dilakukan oleh mulanya oleh Puan Zakiah itu satu yang dengan kupasan yang bukan biasa. Selalunya kalau kita dengar kupasan birokrat ini hanya mencerakin beberapa program kerajaan, tetapi beliau memberikan suatu pandangan termasuk langkah-langkah yang perlu diambil yang memerlukan anjakan daripada pendekatan yang ada sekarang. Dan saya ucap tahniah. Dan kemudian Gubernur Bank Negara dan akhirnya Profesor Terence Gomez. Dan ini hanya berlaku kerana ada perubahan dalam negara. Kerana Profesor Terence seperti biasa bukan saja menegur dan mengkritik pentadbiran lama, tetapi juga sekeras itu dengan pentadbiran Pakatan Harapan. Dan kita mengambil sikap yang terbuka walaupun kita cukup ruang untuk menjawab sebahagiannya dan bersetuju. Dan saya peribadi memang mengikuti rencana dan buku-buku beliau. Dalam penjara saya baca semua buku-buku beliau. Dan kita tentunya berupaya untuk memberikan pandangan dan kupasan. Dan ini Dato Seri Abdul beritahu akan dilakukan perdebatan dan perbincangan dengan pembentang kertas termasuk Profesor Terence dalam beberapa sesi dengan jatuh kuasa Parlimen dan juga yang bukan anggota Parlimen. Jadi itu jawapannya. Saya juga ingin menjelaskan bahawa seperti yang kita dengar dari sebelah siang, bahawa perubahan transformasi ini memang besar. Tetapi dalam semua perubahan dan transformasi, dia juga mencabar keupayaan kita memenuhi janji kita. Dalam transformasi yang berlaku dari Ukraine dan sebelumnya Poland, banyak negara yang kecundang. Kerana transformasi ini ataupun perubahan meletakkan harapan rakyat yang begitu tinggi. Dan pemerintahan baru jika tidak waspada dengan tekad politik yang jelas dan pelaksanaan program yang benar-benar peduli terhadap masalah rakyat, pemerintahan itu akhirnya kecundang. Dan kita terima baik teguran itu. Kerana ini juga bukan saja perlu political will, tetapi akan mengakibatkan apa yang dikatakan political survival. Oleh yang demikian, saya masih menganggap sidang seperti ini suatu langkah untuk memperingatkan kita. Dan kita tidak, ini bukan kerajaan, tapi kebetulan parti dalam kerajaan yang menyokong kerajaan. Dan tetapi saya juga terima kasih kerana seperti sudah tahu, yang hadir, yang diundang seperti mana anggota Kaukus adalah wakil-wakil dari parti pembangkang. Dan ini bukan perkara yang biasa dalam tradisi dulu. Dan saya harap ini dapat dikembangkan supaya dialog atau wacana yang sihat dan segar sepatutnya memerlukan kesediaan untuk mendengar, menerima teguran, memberi pandangan dan merangkul semua pandangan dari pelbagai sosok fikiran yang mungkin berbeza. Kita punyai dan warisi walaupun disebut kelemahan-kelemahan asas termasuk dalam pentadbiran lama. Tetapi kita masih mewarisi satu sistem dan asas yang agak kukuh. Dan ini memberi keyakinan bahawa kita mampu merubah sekiranya kita lebih jujur dan ikhlas melaksanakan perubahan. Dan ini cabarannya. Dan saya fikir ketiga-tiga penceramah dan ditekankan dengan begitu keras oleh Profesor Terence Gomez ialah apakah ada keupayaan atau kesanggupan atau tekad politik, political will untuk kita membawa perubahan. Ada perkara yang mengambil masa dan lebih sukar, ya, lebih sukar jadi pemerintah daripada menjadi pembangkang. Itu kenyataan nombor satu. Lebih sukar melaksanakannya daripada teori seorang akademik. Itu juga nombor dua. Tetapi yang harus kita terima kenyataan ialah mesti ada upaya yang sungguh-sungguh yang kita sebut sejak 98-99 dalam reformasi, in uridu illal islah mastatang, bahawa perubahan mesti dilakukan sedaya upaya kita. Soalannya, apakah kita telah lakukan sedaya upaya kita? Kita izinkan saya sambung dalam bahasa Inggeris. Kalau Tuan Yang Dipertua tidak dalam prosedur Parlimen ini kita minta izin. Kerana kebetulan kehadiran rakyat bukan Malaysia begitu ramai pada pagi ini. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I was saying that I need to proceed on in English, partly to be more effective in my response to Terence Gomez. No, no, I think I am coming from a position of accepting the fact that our fundamentals are still strong. We are fortunate that our economic fundamentals and the change, the phenomenal, transformational change in the last elections gives that impetus, a new sense of urgency among Malaysians, that they want Malaysia to propel its economy and ensure there is good governance. To me, the central issue is not what they say, the economy is stupid. No, the central issue is still governance. What has been talked about by our representatives, the AP, the ICU and Bank Negara and Terence, is essentially related to the issue of political will, which means good governance. Do we actually want to pursue the reform agenda as promised? We do acknowledge there are problems, but I think to be fair, we have to acknowledge that under Tun Mahathir as Prime Minister, there has been remarkable progress. Kit Siang made reference to the issue of appointments, which is fundamental. I mean, more so even to me, to talk about judicial independence or media freedom. Because we have suffered and endured because of unfreedom. So that is fundamental. But let us then utilize this freedom to benefit, first to honor our commitment, but secondly to benefit the masses. The excesses are real. Yes, we have not been able to read the excesses of the past. We have tried in a sluggish manner pursuing this reform agenda, but there are resistance. People tend to talk about resistance among the bureaucrats. I don't totally share that view, because I think the resistance among the political leaders is the major challenge. The bureaucrats generally are trained in the old British system to follow the dictates of the political masters, with some exception, of course. So I think if we are absolutely clear on these fundamental good governance, then we realize that the anti-corruption drive, the abuse of power, the separation of powers must be fully respected. Now, so we will have to begin now, And I'm reminded by the poem by T.S. Eliot, time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future. And time future contained in time past. What might have been and what has been point to one end, which is always present. It's a very philosophical statement by this great American English poet, not representing the ideals of Trump, but then more human, more philosophical. So, the first issue is, of course, the new economic policy. Since 2007, I've crafted the Malaysian economic agenda to dismantle the new economic policy. It continues to be an issue of debate in the country, but to my mind, it is not a zero-sum game. We are not saying dismantle the new economic policy and not pursue with affirmative action based on need, or marginalize and ignore the plight of the rural poor or the urban poor or those in the heartland. I have this problem personally too, because the urban elites, the conglomerates, the business circles love to hear the fact that we want to dismantle the new economic policy. But they seem to be quite oblivious, not committed to the need to alleviate the conditions of the poor. So we must have this commitment to dismantle a race-based policy. I think looking at the antecedents of history, you should realize that it is not really all that bad when it's begun. Because there's a crave, there's a concern among the majority of the Malays that their economic concerns are not being addressed by the government. And I think, however much you want to sound liberal or democratic, you have to acknowledge that fact. This country will not remain sustainable. We are not able to deal with the concerns of the majority of our population, Malays and the Bumiputras. So Tun Razak then envisaged his new policy, the new economic policy, but we have found in the decades that follow some measure of progress. Social mobility, nobody could question, through massive educational programs, better schools in the rural areas. Otherwise, you talk about meritocracy, you expect those students in Kapit and Maning Urai to compete with the students in Kuala Lumpur, in the best schools of Kuala Lumpur. It makes no sense at all. John Rawls talks about justice as fairness, and it's grossly, manifestly unfair to get the Malays or the Bumiputras in the rural areas to compete with the best elite schools in Kuala Lumpur. But having said that, is this a race issue or an issue of justice affecting all communities? Do we now acknowledge that the problem still remains among the majority of the Malays and the Ibans and the Kadazans, the Indians in the estate sector, the Chinese in some of the squatter areas, and now the urban poor among all races? Yesterday at Sunway University, I made reference to Alexis Tocqueville's Habits of the Heart. We can talk about democracy, freedom, about policies, about corruption, about rights and responsibilities, but it must begin with a conviction, with the habits of the heart, that you believe in freedom and justice, and humanity. Now, if you are poor, you are poor. The majority of the poor, and inequality, gross inequality, is still being found in this country, despite all the rhetoric and policies that want to alleviate the problems of the poor. Must we pursue an obsolete policy just because to cater for a populist demand that the Malays are not prepared to hear that we cannot dismantle the policy, or have the courage or conviction, the tenacity of purpose to pursue a new agenda of reform, by which, and in the process, we actually help alleviate the rural poor, the majority of the Malays and the Bumiputra. And at the same time, do not ignore the plight of the poor in the estate or in the urban Chinese, which may happen to be in a small minority. But regardless, we want all Malaysians to feel that this new entity called Pakatan Harapan deals with the situation in a transparent, just manner. We went through the ICU report in the caucus with Kit, Nazari, and the rest. And we were quite impressed with the ICU findings that even under the past administration, the funds disbursed to help alleviate the poor, condition of the poor, is not small. It's one of the relatively very high in any developing country. 26 to 28 billion ringgit per year. But disbursed through, 28 agencies or departments with political masters at play, with huge bureaucracy and organization. So why can't we relook at the entire program and policy? Why must we just inherit an old the old mechanism and proceed on? And there has been some research to show that in terms of poverty alleviation, if we have a new direction, new policy, new commitment that will garner the support and more importantly, to care for the welfare. Because with the habits of the heart, with the right habits of the heart, you will not accept any notion of a person, of a position to ignore. I mean, you can't have a Chinese, comfortable Chinese conglomerate chief, multi-billionaires, who can just observe this terrible plight of the orang Ulu in Bacalalan or the Malay fishermen in Tumpat. We must get the facts right to them, that if you want the country and the economy to be sustainable, it is not merely the duty of the government, but the duty of all Malaysians with the right habits of the heart. Similarly, a Malay cannot be talking about Malay survival, Malay supremacy, and ignore the fact that 1 hour from Kuala Lumpur, an estate in Ijo among the Indians are still living in dilapidated conditions. Why? If that happens, then there's something wrong with your faith, with your so-called Islamic rhetoric and your values. This is, to my mind, is rahmatan lil alamin. The correct position that we must envisage, but in practical terms, in economic terms, then we have to relook, because 26 billion, according to some research, is actually excessive. We can substantially reduce if it is effectively managed. Again, the approach should not be assistance other than those really in the most deprived category, but as Samir Amin, of course, have referred to this dependency syndrome. For decades, you give them bits so that they continue to be dependent on you and vote for you because they are hoping for the 400 ringgit or 200 ringgit annually from you. Our program must be to empower them. Empowering them so that they are truly independent. They have the right to choose your party or to deny your right. Now, and not because they are totally dependent in a form of enslaved by the system. We talk about freedom. The reformacy is all about freedom. How do then you rationalize a policy that continue this form of enslavement of our people, which is being practiced in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, including in Malaysia. And we need to depart substantially. That this is not a new policy of enslavement, but a new policy of empowering our people to be totally free. Freedom is not to be enjoyed by the urban elites here in the comfortable sphere. Freedom must be felt by the common men and women in our society. That insofar as the issue of inequality and poverty and the new economic policy dismantling. I know even in my party, as Terence alluded to, still we have been struggling after 20 years of struggle, some debate on whether you must have a Malay economic agenda or a Malaysian economic agenda. I don't compromise on this. I've lost some Malay base because of my failure to articulate that vision, to disseminate the correct information, to get them to understand. But I'm convinced that we can present a case, but this is after all justice. There's one incident, I may tell you, this is not too academic, I'm coming after Terence, is not an easy task. But I was addressing a mosque in Penang, congregation in the mosque in Penang. Thousands of Muslims were there. Then, before the Isha prayers, the Imam expressed his concern about, he says, Anwar, you're trying to portray too liberal an image and not too Malay, and you talk about the DEB, the Dasar Ekonomi Baru, the new economic policy. So I said, okay, I'll explain. So after the congregation, when I spoke, I mentioned, said, look, I had this experience, which is known to some people. I've said this before in public. I was Minister of Education, and there was teachers, Chinese primary school teacher, who earns about 1,000 ringgit those days per month, came with his daughter, 9 A's in the SPM results. And the daughter was crying, calling me uncle, I want to do medicine in any university in Malaysia, and they say I can't because of the quota. So I said, well, the quota is meant to help the Malay poor, because otherwise you may have 10% of Malays in the medical faculty. But you look at this girl. How do you then address this? Can you tell her, no, I'm sorry, Swilim or whatever, that we have a quota. You are denied of your right. No, I just can't say that. I said, look, I will take up your case and try to increase and assist in whatever way possible. Of course, she was fortunate because I happened to be Minister of Education and she got in. But my point is, these are human issues. Do I do it at the expense of the Malays? No. Because I support strongly the efforts, initiative of Unku Aziz, the Vice Chancellor then, to embark on this policy of Asasi, to train Malays and Bumiputra, additional training to get them to compete at par in these faculties. Otherwise, you have another problem of standards. You compromise on standards because you want numbers and quality. Then you will have universities of substandard. You will never you strive for excellence. So, in the congregation, all Muslims, Malays, I think not one of them felt that this is unreasonable. Because he realized, I'm a Muslim. I was in the mosque. How do then I respond in a manner that will be perceived by this young girl as being inhuman or manifestly unjust? They're certainly not the way of certainly represent Islam or Malay tradition and values. So I think these are issues that we have to address fairly and squarely. And I don't think we, the political leaders, have done enough to engage with the masses on why we need to have this new Malaysian agenda, that humanity, based on what Tocqueville said about the habits of the heart. And I'm convinced that this can happen. We'll try, we'll continue to pursue this agenda. But this is not an agenda which we can discuss and just dictate in the forum. You realize what happened in a few of our initiatives, including ISER. It is not a dictate of the urban elite. We must make sure that we have adequate discussions and interaction with our people. Having said that, I still appeal to the rich, to the conglomerates, must be seen and more committed. When we talk gross inequality, you don't get excited about those billionaires in the country and you allow for these people to live in such dilapidated conditions. Completely unjust and immoral and unethical. Yes, we talk about market economy, market reforms. Yes, and I think we must allow this. The policy of the government must be to allow for market reforms. And therefore, the privatization comes. But I remember, Kit Siang used to say, but not privatization, but he says his concern is privatization, which means it's not a policy to privatize, but how the process, the transparent manner of disbursing this or selling off these companies. Mansur Olson, one of my favorite economic writers, mentioned about the danger of privatization or encouraging the private entity without proper rules, transparent rules, and fair rules. He said, danger of robber barons, modern robber barons. In the past, you have these warlords coming into villages and squandering everything, rape and everything, but only once a year. And they leave the village in peace. So the villagers know that they will have peace, except that one day when the warlord would appear. In the new form of privatization, if it's not conducted fairly and transparently, you are being raped and plundered every hour or every minute. You use the electricity, water, phone. If the policy is not transparent, then people, you are being plundered every day in your life. I mean, it's a valid point. So whilst I am for, clearly, efforts or policy to privatize, I am also mindful of the fact that the policy must be really transparent. Now, the final note on this subject is what happens to Malay entrepreneurs and business efforts. Now, I think without a clear Bumiputera policy, we must encourage Malaysians and Malaysian conglomerates and companies to be mindful of this. You have to tell them politically it's not sustainable if you ignore the majority of the population and condemn them to as farmers or poor. So which means there must be additional effort. We were looking the last meeting of the caucus, graduate unemployment, which is a huge problem in this country. The vast majority happen to be Malays, B40. And there is a clear reluctance of the private sector to take them. Valid reason or prejudice? I think it's both. The reason given is the lack of competency in English. So I think in our embarking on new policy, we must be very clear that we want all Malaysians, particularly graduates, to be very competent in Bahasa, no compromise. That's a national language. But at the same time, we must realize and acknowledge in this competitive world, English is so important. Which means, in tertiary level, you must enhance the teaching so that the level of proficiency of the English language among students will be further improved. Now, if they have this failure, like the B40 graduates, what is the harm for the big conglomerates? I mentioned it to Sanwi yesterday. You want to employ 60 or a year. You get 10 of them, the poor, B40. Give them intensive English training for 2 weeks. They can improve. Because they have already the basic. What is the problem for a major conglomerate entity to help the poor graduates, the P40, by introducing this intensive English program? If that is your reason for denying them the jobs. Because otherwise, this inequality is not going to help to promote stability. Now, other issues, of course, are the new. I'm not merely to just responding to the speakers, but the issues like digital economy. I have tried to popularize the DNA 23 because I want this digitalization, digital technology to be part and parcel and participated by the vast majority of our people. We have the capacity. We have localization from Netflix to iFlix, from Uber to Grab, and to mylorry.com, and so there is the capacity, the ingenuity, the brilliance of our young minds, the creativity. But there are certain challenges. For example, talking to startups and the big technology companies, they realize that Malaysian workers are very competent, but they notice one flaw. They don't employ Malaysians as for coding and for programmers. I asked them why. Because the university education somehow or other happens to be rather 2 to 3 years behind time. And the pace of change is so fast that requires universities to work in synergy with the private sector. And I don't share this view of utilitarianism as a education philosophy, which means the universities become like creating robots. What Ivan Illich talks about, sacred cows and part and parcel of the conglomerate private culture. No. The ideals of education, ethical values, principles in life, art, science, literature, the general studies must be equally promoted. But there are areas of discipline that we need to have a synergy with the private sector, which means universities and academics must be persuaded to then transfer their students to the industry or the industry to come into the university. Otherwise, there's not a question of mismatch, but certainly we are not up to the mark, although we refer to some universities as the premier universities. Still, this is the view that the findings from meeting the top digital companies, which means, again, coming back to the other issues on our effort to promote investments. Malaysia must continue aggressively to promote domestic investments and foreign direct investments. We manage the economy since the 80s and 90s because of our ability to attract foreign direct investments. And therefore, we have to cultivate better relations with our neighbors, with China, with India, with the United States, and with Europe. We must make Malaysia into a tourist destination, but at the same time, a destination for foreign direct investments. Now, I am not, for unbridled capitalism. You have seen the excesses, the plight of the orang asli, children in Johor, and my position vis-a-vis the reclamation in Penang, affecting the life and welfare of the villagers, livelihood of villagers, 5 Malay villagers, 1 Chinese village in Gelang Patah, and I've strongly urged the Chief Minister in the state of Penang to review and listen to the concerns of civil society and the villagers and try to make the necessary adjustments. So I think you are absolutely right in suggesting that what makes a difference between the old regime and Pakatan Harapan is our view of development. That's why my starting point is the issue of governance, good governance. Our view of development, which means we are not in favor of unbridled capitalism. There must be some courage, political will on the part of the government to know the excesses. Climate change is a major issue now, and it's not a burden to the government. It is still economically viable to undertake some legislative programs, including reforestation in a big way, which I will announce in Sarawak in 2 days. Which means we must have the courage to say, stop logging, stop the destruction of our jungles and forests, and continue embark a new sense of program, including reforestation. Because the calamity in Kelantan, in Sarawak, ignoring the plight of the tribes and the rural poor, is well acknowledged. The calamity is a result of our either compromise in terms of rules to allow the approvals of new industries with chemical emission, should be a story of the past. Peat soil is proven the greatest emission of carbon. And we must be proactive to say no more peat soil for this purpose, because it contributes a large amount of emission of carbon. So we must be able to say we support the industry, but we must draw the line. And this takes a lot of political courage and incorruptible political leadership. So I thank you again. Some other points, but I think we'll go on till Jumu'ah prayers, and I think that's not acceptable. So may I conclude by thanking the committee who are taking this initiative, which is remarkable, which is to my mind a major shift in the attitude and the position of the ruling party. I must thank the speaker in particular. We have a very progressive speaker. I have to praise him a little, otherwise he will not allow me to give an extension of 5 minutes in Parliament. But very frankly, Dato, you have been, a new sort of a freshness in our Parliament, and your position to support this sort of endeavour is much appreciated, and of course with your staff. And thank you again, members of the caucus. Some of them here, Wan Junaidi, I see that Nazri and Kit Siang. It was a wonderful opportunity for me to work in the caucus with Kit Siang beside me and Nazri on my left. It's not an easy task, but we managed very well thus far. Thank you very much again. And to Johari, for this wonderful work. A lot of preparation, but I think the challenge for you to continue to pursue, to make sure that we summarize and present to our colleagues in cabinet, and I will of course then present it to the Prime Minister to express some of our concerns and the future direction of economy. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.